Hello guys, today we're going to be talking about the skin conductance response. We're going to be using the Mindfield eSense Skin Response Manual, and I recommend anyone here go check that out. It has a lot of useful tips and tricks on how to use the SCR device we will be using by eSense, so definitely recommend checking that out. Now let's get right in. Skin response. It's also known as the galvanic skin response, GSR, electrodermal response, EDR, or just skin conductance, SC. It is a measurement method based on bioelectrical properties of the skin. The skin conductance depends on the activity of the sweat glands of the skin and reacts to the smallest changes, which we can't detect as wet hands yet. The eSense skin response applies a very small, safe, and unnoticeable electrical voltage. Like if you wear the strap around your finger, you'll feel a pulse coming from it as it's recording the data. And this results in an electrical current to the skin. Through the changes of the small current, we can measure the activity of the precipitation glands of the skin, far below the threshold of self-perception. The higher the activity of the sweat glands, the more the skin gets wet, and the better the current is conducted. It can notice even minute differences that we ourselves can notice. As a result, the skin conductance rises. The skin response measures the skin conductance in microsiemens. Skin conductance is measured in microsiemens, or symbolized as micro S, where micro denotes a millionth and siemens is the unit of conductance. Skin resistance is also a common term, simply denoting the inverse of conductance. The activity of the precipitation glands is determined by the autonomic nervous system, which contains two major subunits, the parasympathetic nervous system and the sympathetic nervous system. The precipitation glands of the skin are slowly controlled by the sympathetic nervous system, making them a good indicator for inner strain and stress. The sympathetic nervous system reacts to stress stimuli by activating all the emergency functions of the body, bringing it to a state of heightened responsiveness. Pulse and blood pressure rise along with the glucose level in the blood and general alertness. With these changes comes the effect of wet hands, on which our measurement relies. And essentially, this is what wet hands is indicating, our general alertness and arousal levels. We all know a time in our lives when we got wet hands. Think of the speech you gave in front of an audience or a job interview. If in those situations you were excited, can you remember the cold, sweaty hands? A scientific theory for this effect assumes that our ancestors needed wet hands to have a firmer grip on things. For example, in an escape or pursuit through difficult terrain. When the threatening situation is over, the parasympathetic nervous system becomes dominant. Pulse, blood pressure, and glucose levels fall again. The body enters a rest state to allow recuperation. Hands become dry again. So what's in play here? It's the sympathetic nervous system, right? When our hands get sweaty, when we're excitable and alert. That's why skin conductance response is a great measure of stress. The increased activity of perspiration glands through our stress stimuli is easily visible through the associated increase in skin conductance. The stress stimulus can be mental or emotional strain, or taking a sudden deep breath, or a starting action like someone unexpectedly clapping hands, or the loud drop of an item on the floor. Just try it with eSense. You will easily see the effects. So, skin response and biofeedback training. Stress and its vegetative symptoms can be greatly reduced through biofeedback training, where you intentionally work on lowering your skin response. Skin response is a universal tool for biofeedback training. It is widely used in the therapy of anxiety, panic disorders, and specific phobias. Further fields of use are high blood pressure, tinnitus, and sleep disorders. If you suffer from a serious disorder medical condition, always consult a professional. Do not attempt to treat yourself. So it's just saying that eSense skin response is not a medical device, and you shouldn't be using this to treat any of your undiagnosed ailments. Skin response is a precision device. It can measure the smallest changes, which it would be impossible to recognize yourself. Have a look at the following example of a measurement to see how insightful the results are. It can detect incremental differences in your skin response or the sweat gland activity. Measurements are done by placing two electrodes on two fingertips of the same hand. The dark-colored lower side of the electrode should be in good skin contact. Other positions for the electrodes and other electrode types are possible as well, but this is just what the device comes with. The goal of the feedback training is twofold. This is just talking about how it's good to intentionally reducing the skin conductance response. The goal of the feedback training is twofold: a reduction of the permanent basic level of stress and a reduction of the immediate stress response to a particular stimulus. A biofeedback training consists of 4 training stages. Schedule for first training about 60 to 90 minutes of free time in which you can conduct the training undisturbed and flexibly. We're just going to be using this to get data for various types of distress. There is bad stress, distress, and there is good stress, eustress. You need to ask yourself if you are stressed because you feel overwhelmed and are angry about something, or because you are upset, or are you stressed because you are full of drive and excitement. I was actually taking my skin conductance recordings the other day, and I was looking at first this really scary image. It was a spider, and then I was looking at this really calm river, lake, beach setting, and it was so relaxing. You would think I would have higher skin conductance response to the spider. Actually, it was the reverse. I was more excited about the river and the calm lake than the spider. So that's interesting. That made me realize that it's not just bad things that this heightened activity is showing us. Reading off of the eSense Skin Response Manual. So if you have any questions on this, please let me know. The skin conductance response. The skin conductance contains 2 components: the tonic static level and the phasic fluctuating reactions. And these components are usually designated as skin conductance responses, SCR. While the level is represented well in the average of the measured values, the eSense skin response also measures the amount of skin conductance response, SCR, per minute. In general, a higher number of ECR per minute is an indicator for higher stress. Whether that means good or bad stress, I haven't tested that out yet, so we can see if it's only specific for the type of stress. I don't think it can discern between whether you're excited because of a stressful stimuli or a negative stimuli. I think by stress, they just mean excitability. So this is just giving us an average of that excitability. So value from experience, which is in alignment with scientific literature, suggests that a relaxed frame is between 0 and 5 SCR per minute. 6 to 9 SCR per minute starts in animated state. 10 or even from 16 SCR per minute is a level of stress or even high stress can be assumed in this case. The SCR are greater comparing biofeedback sessions to each other. If your goal for training is a reduction of stress, then the amount of SCR per minute should decrease over several sessions. The average value in the microsiemens of a session is an indicator for the level, hence your basis level of tension or relaxation. There shouldn't be any other outside skin conductance response inducing stimulus. The average value also taken the SCR into consideration and is falsified with many SCR per minute. You should therefore use as quiet a frame as possible without any SCR to determine your own stress level. So they're just saying to repeat this a few times so you get your baseline average SCR. We have colored the SCR minute in the eSense app. Low SCR are green or yellow and high SCR are orange or red. Let me show you the graphs. Here we are. So low SCR are green or yellow and high SCR are orange or red. So you're more stressed out. Maybe you're more excited or you saw a spider, any of the two. In the right diagram, there's also time in which the values rise. Here's another example. This is a stress state. You can see there's more activity in the red, more stressed out, and there's an increase with time. Over here, it's a relaxed state. You can see there's definitely more blue. There's a decrease, or it's at a steady state, and there's not a lot of red happening here because they're not as excitable. Let me talk a bit about the process of a training. To create the conditions needed for successful training, you need to find a quiet, comfortable room with appropriate temperature. Don't be too cold or anything, or don't be sweating because that would ruin all your results. Don't have a phone with you during the training. Remove sources of distractions from the room. Use convenient seating and wear comfortable clothing. You should avoid all conditions that can make you sweat out of purely physical reasons, like intense physical activity before training or intense sunlight and heat. This could falsify your measured values. To obtain comparable results, you should try to keep your initial and ambient conditions constant. to the series of training sessions. Wrap the 2 electrodes around the upper or middle parts of your index and middle finger of the same hand. The dark lower side of the electrode shall be in good skin contact. Using the non-dominant hand is advisable because the skin tends to be a little less callous there. Attach the cables and wrap the tape another time around their clips to ensure firm contact. You should neither take the electrodes too firmly where you would block blood circulation, nor too weakly, so as to let them slip and move around. Put your hand down onto a comfortable support where it can rest. Start the application and have a first glance at the values. If they're below 1 microsiemen, the electrical conduct through the clip is bad, or your skin is dry and may be calloused. Check the contact clips or change your hand or the position of the electrodes if necessary if the conductance is permanently bad. We have listed several tips in the FAQ for the eSense skin response, so you would have to go through those tips if you are facing these problems. Here's a bit about session duration. In comparison with the other biofeedback techniques, you'll need fewer sessions for reliable success. 6 to 10 sessions should be good. To keep focused throughout the entire session, you should limit each session's length to about 30 minutes or less. If you start feeling tired while training, you should shorten your sessions and practice more often instead. We don't need to practice, so we would have shorter sessions because we don't want participants to be distracted, and that would result in getting falsified data. So we would have shorter sessions because we're not really using those for any training purposes. So just keep that in mind. For the interpretation of the measurement, we distinguish between tonic and facial effects. The tonic component is the longer-term average of skin conductance and its development during one session. Values for the tonic level can vary between 1 to 15 microsiemens, depending on the individual and the situation. In contrast, rapid changes, fluctuations of skin conductance often caused by sudden stimulus, but also appearing spontaneously, are the facial components of the skin response. Since we want to study people in different states, we'd first want to record their tonic level when they're engaged in one situation or task, and then separately record their tonic level for a different condition, so we can compare the differences, because you're gonna get the average of the skin conductance response by the end of you collecting the data. If you do both of these situations in one trial, you're gonna get an average of both. And you can't really have that because you want to compare the two, right? So you want to space those two out separately. Keep that in mind. The facial component of the skin response is only giving us minute differences, and it isn't very consistent. So I want you guys to mostly focus on the tonic level. The stimulus can appear spontaneous or as a reaction to a stimulus. The cause of facial effects can be internal, thoughts, memories, and emotions, or external. That's why we want to look at the tonic level. Look at the average. A few spikes in here and there that might not be of substance. In a state of heightened excitation, both the general tonic level and the rate of spontaneous fluctuations is increased. Keep that in mind. We want to see both. With low excitation and rest comes a lower tonic level and fewer spontaneous fluctuations. So here is an example of rising stress. As you can see, there are more phasic activity, like spikes happening, and you can see that the skin conductance per minute activity is much higher. That is our tonic level. And over here, you can see it is much lower, and this is an example of phase with relaxation. You don't see as much of facial activity, and you're not seeing a high tonic level. It's only 2 SCR per minute, which is expected. So first stage, we observe and experiment, and this is to determine our initial status. We first record our baseline state for 10 minutes at rest without influencing the measurement, back to getting a good baseline state. This is the instructions to the participant. Before, we were talking about the importance of it. How would you get the baseline properly now? You would relax as best as you can and do not watch the measured values for the whole 10 minutes. As it would compromise a true baseline measurement, you would be looking at it and aware of what you're doing, and that would result in a change ultimately. I remember we were taking heartbeats per minute a few weeks ago, and I remember one of our team members were looking at their own heartbeat. By looking at their heart rate, they themselves would start to control it. That leads to alterations in the data collected, and then they would be like, oh, I think my heart rate is this or my heart rate is that, and them thinking themselves resulted in alterations in the data because they're conscious of what is happening. We don't want our participant to know what is being collected, because if they're aware of the activity, that could lead them to change it. Like, imagine you're aware of your own breathing. You wouldn't be breathing normally. So now have a look at the complete curve and its average tonic level after the first 10 minutes. Does it rise or fall in certain phases? So we're looking at the phasic fluctuations now. Or is the general level constant throughout the measurement? If the general level is constant, we're looking at this steady state. And even you can see there's more phasic firing here. There's some increases. Generally it's increasing, but it's also decreasing. It's much more fluctuating on this graph. Or is the general level constant throughout the measurement? How would you judge your ability to relax during the exercise? Maybe you can already find dependencies between the objective measurement and the subjective feeling of relaxation or excitation. If you find no connection, don't worry. You will find a connection during the sessions to come. Keep notes that on the general level of the curve and the approximate number of fluctuations per minute to know your initial training status. If there's a general increase or decrease in the skin conductance response over time, and also keep in mind of what your tonic level is. After you complete the 10-minute baseline, you'll be shown a survey first, answering the questions and take notes if necessary. It'll be asking you how you feel in general on a scale of 1 to 10. Then you'll see the pie charts, and that shows the fluctuations per minute. So this is what we would be seeing and what we would get inferences out of. So this is just your state at rest, and that's about it. So second stage, targeted biofeedback training with the skin response. The second stage consists of multiple sessions. These sessions should always follow the following scheme. You shall now exercise conscious relaxation with the feedback signal. So the second stage is talking about consciously altering your skin conductance response. This is a biofeedback method. It was what the device was originally intended for therapeutic purpose. But we're not going to be doing that. Third stage, deliberate provocation, relaxation, and stress coping. We will now actively use stressors to improve your ability to deal with them. So skin conductance biofeedback is particularly suitable for the use of targeted provocation methods because it shows a timely and sensitive response to stimulus, and because this response is also proportional to the strength and significance of the stimulus. Start the measurement and watch your readings for a while. We're not going to be asking the participants to watch the reading, we're just going to be taking it and asking them to relax for a few minutes. Now a selective stressor should be applied. This can be a certain thought, sound, or image with a negative connotation. Almost every person knows certain things or situations that distress them, and then under the influence of such stressor, they're asked to relax and bring it down again and reduce spontaneous fluctuations. But this is again more for therapeutic training purposes. It is sort of similar to exposure therapy, because in exposure therapy, you would repeatedly meet that stressful stimuli and try to stay calm. This method can be used for anything that evokes a state of altered arousal. So be creative, think of anything, and find any literature that you think is cool for us to replicate and talk about. It doesn't just have to be about training they use the device for. Fourth stage, transfer relaxation without feedback, which is what we're really going to be doing, because we don't want our participants to know the feedback. That could be a major confound in our study. So it's basically just the same thing, but without feedback. Again, there's first, second stage, third stage, fourth stage is more about their training and how this is used for relaxation. We're really not going to be doing any of this. What you just need to know is the setup, like how they set it up, how they record it, how to avoid any sources of falsified data. That's what you need to focus on. Just be creative with what you want to study, but make sure you don't run into any of the problems that I have gone through here. You don't have to follow the exact order here. This is just generally what you need to look out for. The general view and open training. This is your overall maximum and overall minimum. This is the momentary, the current value, time elapsed, difference between maximum and minimum, an indicator for rising and falling values. This most likely will not be used. All you need to know is the SCR per minute, the average, right? That is what I'm looking for. But if you want to know what these two are, minimum and maximum, this is telling you what your lowest microsiemen level is, and this is your highest level. This is what we're going to be using. The current skin conductance response per minute, percent of SCR of session. So this is the amount of skin conductance response you've gotten per session. For statistical purposes later on, you might need to use this, but really just focus on the average tonic level. And this is what we're going to be using, because this is active training. We're not going to need any open training or any of that. We just want the general view of how it works, and this is what we're going to be using to record it. There's an app for this, so just install it in case you are unaware and just get recording. This is a breath pacer. This could be used in a meditation session. We want to get our participants to start meditating, and we wanted to see the SCR activity corresponding with, their ability to pace their breaths. But this depends on you guys. If you guys want to do anything regarding this, let me know. We can talk about it and just be creative. We can do anything. This just talks about how the data was collected. what your position was, what electrode type we used. Obviously, we're only using what is given to us, the 2 EDA finger clips, and this just rates how they feel. And this will all be saved so you can use it for later when you want to talk about it, and any notes you want to add in. Maybe some unusual behavior you observed, you want to talk about that. You're at an end. Hopefully that helps. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and stay tuned for more on SLNR.